Okay, it's Saturday, the 18th right now, and I am sitting down to put this thing together. And Pisces season begins today. Pisces is it's a body of water, and not a small body of water. It's oceanic in its expanse, both breadth-wise and depth-wise. Uh, Herein is the or are the energy signatures of the poet, the dreamer, the mystic, the visionary, the artist, and the psychic or the navigator. It has two planets given to it as rulership. First is Jupiter, and Jupiter doesn't ever want to do anything small or insignificant, and Jupiter spent the last year basically dipping its toe into and doing the dance of the Piscean experience as it moved through Pisces. So the energy of what Pisces represents has sort of been on the table here from that particular ruler's perspective for a while. The other planet, which has a very strong affinity with Pisces, is Neptune. And Neptune has been essentially surfing its way through the Piscean realm for the past several years and still has, let's see, a couple more years to go. Let's take a look at the chart just for giggles. So, see, Neptune's at 24, so we probably got a couple more years worth of the Neptune consideration in that Pisces zone. What might be a beneficial way, Neptune, what might be a beneficial way to spin the our awareness when presented with an potentially unlimited realm of creative imagination, because that's what Pisces is. And Neptune is it's imagination. It's a capacity to step between the borders of what is and what is not known. Pisces. Here's the realm of dreams, imagination, a it's a creative level of imagination. It can also be illusion, and it's easy to get lost in the realm of Pisces. And with Neptune still doing that Piscean dance, the opportunity for becoming lost along the lines of investigation into levels of awareness that generally aren't on the table for us all the time. It doesn't demean the significance of those factors. It's just one of the reasons that the Piscean considerations aren't on the table as often as one might hope, is that people are not generally comfortable, particularly in our Western culture, with peering beyond a particular borderline of awareness. the comfort zone. We in the Western culture, we're attuned to the idea of being quite comfortable with the comfortable side of Western culture, that material aspect of life. And Pisces, yeah, not really so tuned into that material side of the equation, because it's an attempt to uh, to awaken us to things that we might not be the most comfortable with, from the material Western cultural capitalistic version that we've been indoctrinated into. But there's what shall we call it? There's a shift in awareness that is a little closer to the surface these days than some might be willing to admit, where the and we could couch it within this large or larger context. We're coming to the end of a so-called age of Pisces and shifting into an age of Aquarius, and these are approximately 2,000-year cycles. So part of the what shall we call it, the indoctrination factor that this Piscean time frame has allowed us to engage with at so many levels easily fits within the context of religion. And religion it's a system that in some fashions, it removes us from taking responsibility for what it is that we do, because there are characters, we'll call them gods, or a god, or whatever you want to phrase that, like, that has the overall control factor of what it is that's going to take place. And all we have to do from the Western Christian cultural perspective is to, do what is appropriate for making sure that we don't rock the boat too seriously. We do the appropriate things that, when we get done with this life journey, we're going to be able to return to some ethereal and most likely imaginal, Pisces after all is what we're talking about, realm where we are back in tune with God. Well, if we were to meditate or investigate this more thoroughly, might come to recognize that we are God beings ourselves, placed here on this earth to tend and keep the garden. I know you've heard that phrase before, but what exactly might that entail? I don't want to get into all the scriptural versions of ways to play that game, because the scriptures, they can lead one astray easily. The stories of the Bible, it's a cacophony of experiences that didn't always pan out that well for everybody, and had a tendency to keep the, what shall we call them, the warring factors in play when people didn't quite cotton on to the idea of what it is that you were espousing. Put that aside. We're now entered into the realm of this Pisces, unlimited creative imagination. What is it that your dreams might be tapping you on the shoulder currently to pay attention to? Do you keep a dream journal? Are you at all curious about where these images that arrive, not just at nighttime, because dream images can arrive at any time? I know the psychologists and psychiatrists have made a pretty healthy living on being able to facilitate dream interpretation at, you know, at their level of experience, and it's appropriate that they exist in our modern Western culture, and particularly because we are generally not tuned into or maybe slightly comfortable with what it is that the dreamscapes often present for us. And we've been, given the dictate, shall we say, that it's just a dream. And yet, there is the potential for insight into where it is that those dreams are attempting to get our attention focused upon. We're going right now through a month of Pisces. Jupiter, the traditional ruler of Pisces, is in the sign of Aries. See it right down here? In Aries. And Aries is action, it's impulse. There's a driving factor to it. So what it's doing, because it's the ruler of Pisces, is taking the Piscean fold of this particular month and saying, well, and Jupiter takes about a year to go through a sign. So we're in this year-long Jupiterian push, this drive to, really look a lot more profoundly and more deeply at what does Pisces represent. I mean, Neptune, the other planet that has an affinity with Pisces, is still doing the Piscean dance. The version of our awareness of what oceanic insight is still on the table. And Jupiter being in Aries is saying, investigate, do some serious looking at this. I will provide you with the what should we call it? Things come into my head as I almost picture someone wearing one of those backpack rocket motors for being able to fly yourself around. It's that kind of energy that Jupiter right now is providing for Pisces. It's like lift off the ground, get a higher perspective on what is going on here in this Piscean realm, and how far out to sea is this jetpack that I have on my back going to carry me before it plummets me into this oceanic awareness. Or you might also take a chance and dive into that oceanic awareness of a zone that it beckons us all the time, whether we recognize it or not, to really look profoundly at, why am I here on planet Earth? Are there aspects of me that are at work that I'm, may not be overtly privy to? Soul. Yeah, it's that soul thing that I keep talking about, that we each have essentially an aspect of soul that is the driving motor within us, and the reason for incarnating here in this earthly realm is to assist in developing soul awareness with the experiments of this incarnate earth walk living process where we learn to interact with others and share our awareness in what it is that we perceive with one another, in the hopes that there are aspects within each of us that need these alternative awareness perspectives to round out our understanding of what does it mean to tune into that soul part of us. Herein is kind of a root base for the Piscean experience. We're invited to touch very uniquely what each of our souls wants to grow into. And it's not just on this physical plane earth walk process that I'm talking about. These are just this is like a proving ground where our soul can actually experiment with what does it mean to do this, that, or the other thing, and what are the ramifications of it, and how deeply might I be willing to go along this investigative track. Monday comes. This is a Monday chart, by the way. We have a new moon that happens actually it happens at 0 degrees of Pisces. And the squirrel running around like crazy comes to the fore, because the image that comes from the Sabian symbols from Mark Edmund Jones and Dane Rudger is a squirrel hiding from hunters. And the keynote reads, the individual's need both to ensure his future subsistence and to protect himself from aggressive social elements. I'm sorry. The squirrel not only has to hide and store food for the winter, but to be on the lookout for the dangers involved in gathering the food supply. Social processes always cast strong shadows. The individual is never certain of being safe among his fellow men once the process of individualization, with its negative aspects, competition, social aggressivity, and greed, forces the breakdown of the organic tribal state of mankind during the archaic ages. Since all new moons are about setting intentions, it might be overtly helpful and of phenomenal assistance to sit with this energy at this particular new moon at the very beginning of Pisces and ask yourself, am I tuned in with everything that I can be to the potential of what my soul intended to grow into during this particular earth walk process? something to meditate upon. It's not something that I can give you an answer to, because you may have perceived there are a lot of us. So that means there's a lot of souls present in the investigative process of discovering how to expand that particular soul level of awareness that is not going to be the same for every one of us. As we mill about here on planet Earth, we run into other beings in their soul exploration. And it's an opportunity for us to compare notes. What have you discovered in this soul journey you are on? And here's what I've discovered. And once the notes are compared, there are aspects that are likely to intrigue us in ways that, wouldn't have happened if we had have just mumbled around and bumbled around, not asking questions of one another in our curiosity. Anyway, so the setting of the intention, Monday, new moon, right there at the very beginning of Pisces. What kind of questions might be appropriate that could stimulate and stir up that oceanic level of awareness? Might inspire our dreams to pay more attention to. I ask you, are you keeping a dream journal? Because there are messages that come through quite often at a soul level that spiritual essence has found the use of dreams to actually be one of the more effective ways of getting our attention. And I ask you once more, are you paying attention? On this very same day, Venus, this is Monday we're still talking about, Venus, which has been doing its very fast movement through Pisces, has just gone into Aries. Not as its most comfortable position to be in, because the two signs that are ruled by Venus are one, Taurus, and the other, Libra, opposite here from Aries. And so Hellenistic or vintage ancient astrology speaks of something called detriment. This is when a planet is in the opposite sign from one of the signs that it rules. And it's in Aries, opposite from Libra, one of the signs that it rules. And this just means that Venus, from that Libra perspective, is how we engage with others, how we investigate what does it mean to be with others, is over there in a sign that, while not necessarily inclined, because Aries is itself, it's that expression of the I, my, me, mine kind of an energy, may not be inclined to ask questions of others, because it's exploring the self level. Well, in astrology, these opposite signs, this is an axis, by the way, in the zodiac, represent perspectives on the same thing. And this perspective is on relationship. The Libra thing, how we get along with others, would be kind of moot if there wasn't an other, this Aries personal self expression to get along with. You have to have an individual, and Aries kind of an energy in order for the Libra thing to put two energies, two individuals together so that some kind of relationship can transpire. You can kind of see those, they're both required. So Venus in its next season going through Aries, it may not entirely cotton on to the experience of sharing that energy with other people. But hey, you might not have noticed, but living here on planet Earth, trying to be that monk living in a cave somewhere off the grid and away from other people only goes so far. And there are people everywhere. These are all series. These are, selves. These are all individuals trying to discover, what does it mean to be here? What does it mean to be alive? Well, I'm only going to get so far in the meditative thing by myself. Eventually, I'm going to have to compare notes with others in order to see if, maybe, and this is appropriate right now as we go through Pisces, am I on the right track? Because while we're doing this next month in the Pisces season, the sun, that energy, that, and energy of source is basically inviting us to look deeply within the levels of our creative imagination. Pay attention to the dreams and the messages that are coming through them. Might there be illusion in the mix? Oh, yes, it could be there. One of the other factors not often spoken about, but it's in the mix, and that's escapism. That theoretical monk doing its cave thing likely got, irritated, fed up, needed some time alone to do the discovery process of actually engaging with their personal soul to the point where it was required that they go off and meditate. Do the lone thing, the what is it? The fool on the hill sees the sun going down and the world spinning round. Doot, 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 doot. Alone on the hill. Well, alone on the hill. This is a good month for meditation. There's opportunities that Pisces presents for us to investigate levels of our awareness that don't often sit at the surface and require us to plunge deeply into that oceanic awareness. It isn't wrong. Just remember to come back and have those conversations with others so you can determine, have I been off on a tangential reality that really has minimal relevance? Or might I have discovered something that was meant to be discovered by me so that I might bring it to the attention of someone else or someone else's, that they might be inspired to do a little bit of that meditation process and pay attention to their dreams. Pisces, Pisces, Pisces. The end of the week. Wow. We haven't even gone to Monday yet, and I'm already talking about the end of the week. Mercury comes along doing its dance thing. And here on Tuesday, it's going to dance through a square with Uranus. Uranus and Mercury, they're considered, at least this is something I heard back along the way, octaves of each other. Mercury, basic curiosity, communication, ruler of Gemini and Virgo. there's a stimulation there with Mercury to ask questions. And Uranus, one of those three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, it's a social planet. It's about the experience of what's transpiring in the collective. And from the Gemini Mercury octave essence, I mean, Mercury Uranus octave essence, Uranus says, what's the big picture? Because Mercury can be into details. There's that Virgo side of Mercury at work. Uranus says, yeah. You got a lot of details together. From a Uranus perspective, I want to shake things up a bit and see, where's the foundation, or how stable is your foundation that has developed through the questions that you have asked. And from this Uranus perspective, I want to see at a collective level, have you been asking the right questions? Are you inspired to create an energy from the Uranus Aquarius perspective that will, foment, facilitate a coming together of group energy to accomplish something? The square, theoretically, 90 degrees, not an easy aspect, because here we have an air element where Mercury is, and here we have an earth element where Uranus is. And air and earth, they don't necessarily go out of their way to get along with one another. Earth, there's a practicality always on the table with Earth. Air signs, we have a lot of thinking, a lot of thought processes that might flow through rather erratically and quickly in our investigative experience. And does that fit into a practicality that says that I need something that's stable? I need something that I can count on and stuff. And an air signs is kind of like, yeah, well, I'm in a learning process. I'm investigating, how to put things that sometimes are a little abstract together. Well, Mercury, curiosity, says, yeah, I'm on board for that, but don't go too far afield. And air signs is kind of like, but I live far afield. This is the creative zone where things happen. Anyway, that square says that these two energies won't necessarily get along well with one another, but they're octaves of each other. So if I were to really, hog tie that square down in this particular instance, I would say that there's an energy force at work here that is making a very dynamic attempt to make sure that this Uranus and Aquarius are comparing notes, from that Aquarius Mercury, how do I foment a communication aspect that will flow through the group in a way that can inspire us? Uranus down there in the Taurus, the sign of Mother Earth, is offering to this group the potential to recognize their participation in a global Earth-based format within which to work. Think about that. Will there be challenges? Oh, of course, there's always challenges. But how willing am I to make sure that I'm continuing to compare notes so that something can grow in me and in you? Let's bump the chart ahead a little bit. Oh, yes. Well, wait a second. I got to go back a day. Every time I want to switch. At the same time that Mercury and Uranus are doing their no comparison, there's a trine that's happening between Mercury up here at 16 degrees Aquarius and Mars down here at 16 degrees Gemini. Gemini's a Gemini is the Mercury zone. Mars is action, impulse, energy. It's that driving factor that's driving all this stuff that's here in Aries, saying, ask questions, take chances. Don't forget to turn over every stone in your path to see what is hiding underneath it. This is that Mars kind of energy. And so this Aquarius, Gemini, Mercury, Mars is what it's doing. It's enlivening the mercurial factor in such a fashion that when it's doing this interaction here with Uranus down here in Taurus, it's saying, don't think that you found the answers all in one fell swoop. Oh, goodness, no. Continue to probe and prod each other to see what might be hiding in those deeper recesses of what it is that you and I are possibly attempting to bring to each other's attention. And then we get to the end of the week. I think it's pretty close to, yep, this. End of the week. Moon has gone into Gemini. See the sun up here at 7 degrees of Pisces. Moon moves 12 degrees in a day, 12 to 13 degrees. So that means that during this day, the moon is going to form its waxing square to the sun. First quarter square, crisis in action, and you have to ask yourself, this is Sunday, by the way, was the intention to do that deeper investigation with that 0 degrees Pisces new moon aimed in an appropriate fashion? This is crisis in action. Did I do the things that were going to open up, the potential of a closed book of awareness that Pisces represents for me to peer into? As I'm saying this, I get versions of the Akashic records realms where we are invited to go visit those books of life that are related to our own soul development. The first quarter moon. And that's all I have for this week. Sometimes I might get a little carried away with my words, and likely I did again. I can't make any apologies for it. The astrological dance that I am about, I willingly share with you from, of course, my perspective, in that possibly we might share notes somewhere along the way to see what is more relevant to us than those things that aren't or are no longer relevant. And it's time to let go of. That's another aspect of Pisces, the end of the zodiac. Time to clear the decks of those things that are no longer appropriate. I will see you all next week. Stay tuned.